Please like and subscribe to the channel if you find this video interesting and useful. Give me more ideas you want me to make. Enjoy watching the video. The polished leather of Dr. Emily Carter's sensible low heels clicked with precise rhythm against the marble floor of Hamilton Hall, a sound as sharp and self-assured as the woman herself. Her tailored blazer, a deep, academic navy, perfectly complemented her rich, chestnut hair, pulled back into a severe, yet elegant, chignon. As she swept into the cavernous lecture hall, a murmur of respect, bordering on awe, rippled through the hundreds of students already seated. Emily Carter was, by all accounts, a phenomenon. At 32, she was Columbia's youngest tenured philosophy professor, a published author whose articles graced the most prestigious journals, and a recipient of numerous grants. Her intellect was a gleaming, formidable edifice, admired by colleagues and slightly feared by undergraduates. She moved to the podium, her gaze, cool and appraising, sweeping over the eager, young faces before her. To Emily, the classroom was a theater of pure intellect, a hallowed space for the dissection of grand ideas. She lectured on ancient Greek philosophy with an almost surgical precision, her voice modulated and articulate, each word carefully chosen. She preferred the Stoic logic of Aristotle to the messy, often contradictory, musings of modern thinkers, and certainly to the untested opinions of her students. Philosophy, she would often state, is not a matter of feeling, but of rigorous thought. As Aristotle posited in Metaphysics, her lectures were meticulously prepared, her arguments airtight, her delivery flawless. Yet, beneath the veneer of academic brilliance, a profound solitude hummed. Her apartment, overlooking the Hudson, was tastefully minimalist, filled with books and antique maps, but conspicuously devoid of personal clutter or the warmth of frequent company. Her evenings were spent either buried in research or attending exclusive academic soirees where intellectual sparring replaced genuine connection. She was a star, yes, but a distant, unapproachable one, orbiting a universe of her own making. Miles away, or so it felt, in a dusty, sun-drenched corner of Butler Library, Jake Miller was performing his usual morning ritual, falling asleep amidst a chaotic sprawl of academic detritus. His shaggy, sandy blonde hair obscured a face that, when awake, held an impish charm and a perpetually questioning glint in his blue eyes. Around him, an ecosystem of forgotten coffee cups, crumpled snack wrappers, and post-it notes, some covered in dense philosophical ramblings, others in crude doodles, flourished. A well-worn copy of Nietzsche for Rebels lay open, face down on his chest, its spine cracked in a dozen places. Jake was, affectionately and exasperatedly, known as Columbia's Perpetual Senior. 8 years he'd walked these hallowed halls, accruing more credits than seemed humanly possible, switching majors with the fickleness of a spring breeze, and accumulating a legend that rivaled some of the university's oldest traditions. He was a fixture, a ghost, a resident philosopher king of the campus coffee shops, always on the cusp of graduation, yet never quite there. His best friend, Leo, a perpetually stressed but fiercely loyal computer science major, nudged him awake with a gentle kick to his worn sneakers. Miller, rise and shine, you existential slacker. If you don't graduate soon, they'll put a statue of you, moss-covered and forgotten, out front of the library, right next to the founders. Jake merely grunted, stretching languidly, a half-smile playing on his lips. And what a glorious statue it would be, Leo. A monument to the eternal student, a symbol of resistance against the tyranny of the diploma. He sat up, raking a hand through his hair, his eyes landing on a flyer announcing a special faculty lecture series. Dr. Emily Carter. Ah, the Ice Queen, he muttered, a flicker of something defiant in his gaze. He'd heard whispers of her brilliance, but also of her cold, unyielding intellectualism. To Jake, philosophy was a living, breathing, messy thing, a tool for understanding and navigating the chaos of human existence, not a sterile academic exercise. Their worlds, seemingly immutable, were destined to collide. It happened, as most pivotal moments do, with a jarring abruptness. The annual philosophy department's keynote lecture, a prestigious event drawing faculty and top students, was underway in the grand auditorium. Dr. Carter, elegant and commanding in a charcoal gray suit, was at the podium, delivering a meticulously crafted argument on the inherent flaws of modern ethics, drawing heavily from Kantian imperatives. Her presentation was, as always, brilliant, dense, intellectually rigorous, and utterly devoid of anything resembling warmth or human experience. A polite, anticipatory silence filled the room as she concluded, inviting questions. Several hands shot up, but before the moderator could choose, a voice, clear and unexpectedly resonant, cut through the quiet. Dr. Carter, Jake Miller, who had somehow managed to sneak into the back row despite not being officially enrolled in any philosophy course that semester, stood up. His presence was immediately noticeable. He was the only one in faded jeans and a slightly rumpled band t-shirt amidst a sea of blazers and cardigans. While your exegesis of Kant is undoubtedly flawless, isn't there a fundamental disconnect? You speak of ethics as if they exist in a vacuum, divorced from the lived, often illogical, experience of individuals. Is true philosophy not meant to engage with the mud and mess of humanity, rather than retreating to the pristine, sterile halls of pure reason? A collective gasp rippled through the audience. Emily's cool composure wavered, almost imperceptibly. Her eyes, usually so composed, narrowed. Here was a direct challenge, not from a peer, but from a student? An unregistered, unkempt student, no less. Before she could formulate her frosty retort, a smattering of applause broke out, slowly building, fueled by the younger students who, perhaps, felt a resonance with Jake's impassioned, albeit impertinent, question. Jake, emboldened, gave a slight, defiant bow. Emily's voice, when it came, was a razor's edge. Her gaze fixed on Jake, sharp and unwavering. "Mr. Miller," she stated, her tone dripping with academic disdain, "when you possess a PhD and have contributed original, peer-reviewed scholarship to the field, then, and only then, will I be interested in your philosophy. Until then, I suggest you confine your observations to the campus coffee shops where they might find a more receptive, if less rigorous, audience." The message was clear: stay in your lane, Perpetual Senior. Their eyes met across the crowded hall, a clash of two diametrically opposed worlds, each convinced of its own unshakable truth. The air crackled with unspoken animosity, a precursor to the storm that was gathering. The fallout from Jake's audacious interjection at the keynote lecture was swift and predictably bureaucratic. The following morning, a terse email from the dean's office landed in his inbox, citing disruptive conduct at an academic conference and requesting his immediate presence. Emily, meanwhile, received her own directive. She was to reevaluate Mr. Miller's academic attitude and commitment, a task she approached with the unenthusiastic precision of a surgeon assigned to a particularly messy amputation. It was a thinly veiled attempt by the department to finally either coax Jake into graduating or, failing that, to politely usher him out of Columbia's hallowed gates. Emily viewed it as a waste of her valuable time, a distraction from her infinitely more pressing research on the semiotics of Hellenistic thought. Jake stomped into Emily's office, a pristine, minimalist sanctuary adorned with framed degrees and leather-bound tomes, with the practiced nonchalance of a seasoned rebel. His unbuttoned plaid shirt revealed a faded band t-shirt, a stark contrast to Emily's impeccable tailored suit, which seemed to hum with silent disapproval. The room, usually a haven of quiet contemplation, instantly bristled with an almost tangible tension. "Mr. Miller," Emily began, her voice cool and perfectly modulated, "I believe we need to discuss your unconventional approach to academic discourse." Jake flopped into the visitor's chair, leaning back until it groaned in protest. "Dr. Carter," he countered, a wry smirk playing on his lips, "I believe we need to discuss your conventional approach to academic discourse. It's making philosophy as dead as the ancient Greeks you so tirelessly quote." Emily's eyes flashed, a rare crack in her composed facade. "Philosophy is a rigorous discipline, not a performance art, Mr. Miller. It demands intellectual precision, not theatrics." And what's the point of precision if it alienates everyone? Jake shot back, his voice rising. You stand up there, spouting theories from centuries ago, theories meant to help people understand life, and you manage to make them sound like tax codes. Professors like you, Dr. Carter, you're slowly but surely killing philosophy, turning it into an ivory tower relic only accessible to other academics. Where's the passion? Where's the connection to actual human experience? His words, though perhaps clumsy in their delivery, struck a nerve. Emily felt a familiar sting, a flash of defensiveness. He had dared to accuse her of passionlessness, of intellectual sterility. Her usually unshakable control began to fray. A furious flush crept up her neck. How dare you, she spat, rising abruptly from her desk. You, a perpetual student, who can't even manage to graduate, lecture me on the essence of philosophy? Perhaps you need a reminder of what true wisdom looks like. With a sudden, uncharacteristic burst of anger, she grabbed his arm, a surprisingly firm grip for her slender frame, and practically dragged him out of her office. Come with me, Mr. Miller. I'll show you a real philosopher. They strode through the quiet corridors, past startled students and faculty, Emily's furious clicks echoing against Jake's protesting scuffs. Her destination was clear, the university's inner courtyard, where, beneath the shade of ancient oak trees, stood a magnificent, life-sized bronze statue of Socrates. It was a gift from an anonymous alumni donor centuries ago, a stoic, contemplative figure gazing out over the campus, his hand raised as if in eternal discourse. The statue, its bronze weathered to a deep, verdigris green, was not merely a decorative piece. It was a potent symbol of Columbia's enduring dedication to wisdom and critical inquiry. Its surface, smoothed by generations of students' touch, hummed with the silent stories of countless academic journeys. As they reached the courtyard, the sky, which had been a clear, late autumn blue just moments before, began to darken with astonishing speed. An unexpected, violent thunderstorm was rolling in, the air suddenly thick and heavy with static electricity. The first fat drops of rain splattered onto the paving stones, quickly turning into a torrential downpour. Thunder rumbled ominously in the distance, growing louder, closer. There, Mr. Miller, Emily declared, pointing a trembling finger at the statue, her hair beginning to escape its neat bun, plastered to her forehead by the sudden rain. There is Socrates. A man who truly understood what it meant to seek truth, not merely to rant from the sidelines. Jake, soaked and exasperated, threw his hands up. And what good is Socrates if no one can hear him anymore? If his wisdom is locked away in dusty texts and emotionless lectures? He engaged with the agora, Dr. Carter. He walked among the people. As he spoke, he gestured emphatically, his hand sweeping out. In the heat of their argument, both of them, almost simultaneously, reached out. Emily, in a desperate attempt to make her point, slammed her hand onto the cool, damp bronze of Socrates' pedestal, her fingers splayed. At the exact same instant, Jake, exasperated and defiant, slapped his own hand down, right beside hers, his palm covering a portion of her fingers. Their skin made contact with the ancient metal and with each other, just as a blinding, ear-splitting flash of lightning tore across the sky, directly overhead. A searing, inexplicable current of pure energy arced through the statue, through their hands, and through their very beings. It wasn't just a static shock, it was a raw, primal force, an impossible surge that seemed to vibrate at the very core of their souls. Their bodies stiffened, their eyes widening in shock and then dimming as the world tilted violently. A guttural gasp escaped Emily's lips, a bewildered cry from Jake. The world spun, colors bled, and a deafening, echoing boom reverberated through the courtyard, a sound that seemed to tear the very fabric of reality. The screen went black. A quick cut. They crumpled to the wet ground, unconscious, their hands still touching the cold, electrified bronze of Socrates, the rain continuing to lash down around them. The final scene fades in on two distinct settings. In a sparsely furnished, untidy bedroom, a figure stirs on a rumpled futon, surrounded by scattered books and discarded clothes. Across town, in a luxurious, meticulously organized apartment, Another figure twitches beneath silk sheets in a spacious, elegantly appointed bedroom. Both begin to stir, groaning faintly, the first signs of awakening in bodies that are suddenly, inexplicably, not their own. A throbbing headache, like a dull drumbeat behind her eyes, slowly pulled Emily from the depths of unconsciousness. She groaned, stretching an arm out, only to knock over a precarious stack of graphic novels. "What this?" she muttered, her voice raspy. But it wasn't her voice. It was deeper, rougher, distinctly male. Her eyes snapped open. The room was a disaster zone. Empty pizza boxes, crusts, and congealed cheese, still clinging to the cardboard, lay scattered like fallen soldiers. Clothes were flung over every available surface, a chair, a bookshelf, even a half-deflated exercise bike in the corner. Textbooks mingled haphazardly with comic books and old concert posters. A faint, lingering smell of stale coffee and unwashed socks hung in the air. This was decidedly not her elegant, minimalist apartment. She sat up on the lumpy futon, her body feeling foreign and strangely heavy. Her hands, when she looked at them, were larger, calloused, with slightly chewed fingernails. A thin film of stubble tickled her chin. She scrambled out of bed, her feet, now encased in worn-out sneakers, thudding rather than clicking on the scuffed wooden floor. She stumbled towards a leaning full-length mirror, half obscured by a pile of laundry. Staring back at her was Jake Miller's bewildered face. His unruly sandy hair, his somewhat unkempt beard, his wide, startled blue eyes, all undeniably Jake. Emily let out a shriek, a high-pitched, feminine sound that, jarringly, emerged from Jake's larynx. The sound was so incongruous, so utterly horrifying, that she clamped a hand over her mouth. "Oh my God," she whispered, the male voice struggling to articulate the shock. This can't be happening." Meanwhile, across town, Jake was experiencing his own brand of existential terror. He stirred in a bed that felt like a cloud, silk sheets tangled around his legs. The room was bathed in soft, morning light, emanating from tall, pristine windows. It smelled faintly of lavender and expensive coffee. His first thought was, did I finally get lucky and end up in a 5-star hotel? But then he tried to stretch, and his muscles felt oddly delicate, his limbs strangely slender. He opened his eyes. The ceiling was adorned with intricate crown molding. The furniture was sleek, modern, yet undeniably feminine in its aesthetic. He sat up, the silk nightgown he was wearing, a nightgown, sliding off his shoulders. He felt a sudden, inexplicable lightness in his chest. A quick glance down confirmed his worst fear. His broad, hairy chest was gone, replaced by breasts. He felt a surge of nausea. He scrambled out of bed, his feet sinking into a plush rug, and stumbled towards a large, ornate mirror on the wall. Staring back at him was Dr. Emily Carter. Her flawless complexion, her elegant jawline, her deep, intelligent eyes, albeit currently wide with terror. His own eyes, Jake's eyes, stared out from Emily's face. He let out an ear-splitting scream, a high-pitched, truly feminine sound that echoed through the luxurious apartment. He clapped his hands over his mouth, his manicured fingers trembling. "No. No," he shrieked, the beautiful, academic voice utterly ruined by his panic. "This is a nightmare. I've gone completely insane." Both, in their respective bodies, scrambled for their phones. Emily, fumbling with Jake's unfamiliar device, found her own number under Ice Queen, do not call unless apocalyptic emergency. She dialed, her heart pounding. Across town, Jake, finding Jake Miller, perpetual problem child, in Emily's meticulously organized contacts, answered immediately. "Hello." Jake's deep voice boomed into Emily's ear, but the sound was also emanating, horrifyingly, from her own mouth. "Who is this?" Emily, in Jake's body, roared into the phone, hearing her own voice, Emily's voice, coming from Jake's body in her own ear. "It's me, you idiot." Jake, in Emily's body, shrieked, his voice cracking with panic. I'm you. And you're me." The conversation devolved into a chaotic, hysterical mess. Each of them was screaming, confused, horrified by the sound of their own voice coming from the other, and the other's voice coming from their own body. "I woke up in your disgusting dorm room," Emily yelled, her male voice surprisingly shrill. "And I'm wearing a nightgown," Jake wailed, his professor's voice sounding utterly undignified. The morning quickly became a series of mortifying attempts to navigate their new realities. Emily, standing in front of Jake's mirror, tried to practice speaking like a man. She deepened her voice, tried to mimic Jake's casual inflection. "Yo, what's up, bro?" she tried, but it sounded like a bad impression from a comedy sketch. She even attempted to walk with a more masculine swagger, only to trip over a stray sneaker. Jake, meanwhile, discovered the true agony of Emily's wardrobe. Her closet was a cathedral of tailored suits, elegant dresses, and, to his utter dismay, an array of high heels. He tried to walk in a pair of sleek black pumps, immediately listing dangerously to one side before collapsing onto her plush carpet in a heap. "How does she do this?" he groaned, his voice, Emily's voice, filled with despair. The ultimate challenge of the morning loomed large, their respective obligations. Jake, in Emily's body, had a 9 a.m. lecture on Kantian ethics and the categorical imperative. He stared at Emily's meticulously prepared notes, filled with dense philosophical jargon and intricate logical progressions. He understood precisely none of it. "Categorical, what now?" he mumbled, his reflection looking back at him with a bewildered, distinctly un-Emily-like expression. Yet, the show, or rather, the lecture, had to go on. He stumbled into the lecture hall, feeling utterly ridiculous in Emily's tweed blazer and pencil skirt, the high heels a constant threat to his balance. He stood at the podium, a blank terror in Emily's intelligent eyes. "Good morning, class," he began, his voice, Emily's voice, surprisingly steady, despite the internal panic. He tried to bluff his way through, grabbing a random page from her notes. "Today, we will be discussing the inherent contradictions of post-Hegelian dialectics as they pertain to, the general human condition." He gestured wildly, trying to infuse some of Jake's usual charisma into Emily's refined gestures. To his utter astonishment, the students were captivated. "Wow, Professor Carter is so animated today," whispered one student. "And she actually sounds like she's having fun," mused another. Jake, freed from Emily's strictures, found himself spontaneously inventing examples, cracking jokes, bad ones, but jokes nonetheless, and generally making a mockery of Emily's carefully structured lecture. He even used a crude drawing on the whiteboard to explain a complex concept. The students, used to Emily's cool detachment, found their usually stoic professor suddenly fun, approachable, and surprisingly authentic. They were utterly charmed, mistaking his panicked improvisation for genuine enthusiasm. The Ice Queen had, quite unexpectedly, become the cool professor. Emily, meanwhile, in Jake's body, had the far less glamorous task of trying to submit Jake's long-overdue thesis proposal. Armed with a shaky understanding of Jake's convoluted academic history, she tried to navigate the labyrinthine university administration building. She presented Jake's ID to the stern-faced administrative assistant, who looked at her, Jake's face, with suspicion. "Mr. Miller, you've been submitting this proposal for 3 semesters now," the assistant droned, her eyes narrowing. "And frankly, you look different. Are you even a student here anymore? You look like you just wandered in from a construction site." Emily, unaccustomed to such casual disrespect, bristled. "I assure you I am Mr. Miller, and I am here to submit my thesis," she declared, her voice rough and unconvincing. The assistant merely scoffed, motioning for the campus security guard. "I think you'd better leave, young man. This office is for actual students." Emily, in Jake's body, was unceremoniously escorted out, bewildered and humiliated, her impeccable academic record now replaced by Jake's notorious reputation. The horrific morning had only just begun. The academic week plunged both Jake and Emily into a bizarre, inverted reality. Jake, trapped in Emily's elegant skin, found himself navigating the lofty echelons of academia, a world he'd only ever viewed from the rebellious fringes. Emily, meanwhile, was dragged headfirst into the chaotic, unglamorous life of a perpetually struggling student, a stark contrast to her meticulously ordered existence. His first major test as Dr. Carter was a faculty meeting, a notoriously dry affair where tenured professors debated departmental budgets and curriculum adjustments with the passion of accountants discussing spreadsheets. Jake, adorned in one of Emily's conservative, yet impeccably tailored, suits, sat stiffly amongst the elder statesmen and women of the philosophy department. They were discussing the allocation of funds for a new research initiative, with several professors arguing for cutting student services to bolster their own projects. Jake listened, utterly bewildered by the jargon, but the underlying self-interest struck a nerve. Then, something snapped. The perpetual rebel inside him, fueled by years of observing academic hypocrisy, finally burst forth. He stood up, startling the entire room. "With all due respect, colleagues," he began, his voice, Emily's voice, resonating with an unexpected authority. "We're sitting here, meticulously dissecting budgets, while completely ignoring the people these budgets are supposed to serve. Does anyone here," he swept his gaze across the stunned faces, "actually care what the students think anymore? Or are we too busy funding our own ivory tower pursuits to remember why we're here in the first place?" A collective silence descended, followed by a flurry of shocked whispers. Dr. Eleanor Vance, the formidable head of the department, dropped her pen. Never had the impeccably composed Dr. Carter uttered such an unfiltered, almost revolutionary sentiment. Jake, enjoying the stunned silence, gave a slight, defiant shrug, a very un-Emily-like gesture. He had effectively hit the rebellion mode button, and the department was utterly floored. Meanwhile, Emily was enduring her own baptism by fire into student life. In Jake's body, she was forced to shed her rigid protocols and embrace a world of instant noodles, crowded cafeterias, and spontaneous leisure. She found herself trying to live like a normal student, which involved activities she'd never once considered in her own life. She tried eating a lukewarm hot dog from a street vendor outside the campus gates, an experience that initially repulsed her but slowly, surprisingly, started to taste freeing. She navigated the chaotic lunch lines at the student cafeteria, elbowing her way through the throngs, a far cry from the quiet faculty lounge. One afternoon, Jake's friends, mistaking her for him, dragged her to an impromptu basketball game on the campus court. Emily, who had never played a sport in her life beyond a polite game of croquet, found herself awkwardly chasing a ball, tripping over her own, Jake's, feet, and generally making a fool of herself. Yet, as the sun set and her, Jake's, body ached, a strange sensation bloomed within her. It was a lightness, a genuine, unburdened joy she hadn't felt in years. This chaotic, unscripted existence, so alien to her, was beginning to feel like true freedom for the first time. The comedic potential of their situation was a daily, mortifying reality. Emily, in Jake's body, had to navigate the male restrooms, an experience that left her acutely uncomfortable and often resulted in her accidentally walking into the wrong one. Jake, on the other hand, endured a barrage of unexpected feminine woes. In one particularly awkward moment, a bright-eyed female student approached Professor Carter after class, gushing, "Dr. Carter, your lipstick is absolutely stunning today. What brand do you use? It's so vibrant." Jake, completely flustered and having no idea he was even wearing lipstick or what lipstick even was, mumbled something incoherent and fled the classroom. His lectures, originally intended to cover Emily's carefully structured curriculum, had become an unpredictable blend of philosophical insights and stand-up comedy. Tasked with teaching existentialism and the search for meaning, Jake, in Emily's body, started his lecture with a dramatic reading of a Camus passage, then segued into a surprisingly hilarious anecdote about a pigeon struggling with its own existential crisis in Central Park. He used pop culture references, crude drawings on the whiteboard, and even led a class discussion that devolved into a passionate, albeit chaotic, debate about the meaning of life, set to a background of impromptu air guitar from Jake himself. In Emily's body, One enterprising student, captivated by Professor Carter's sudden transformation into a charismatic, off-the-cuff lecturer, started live-streaming the class. Within days, Professor Carter's viral lecture clips were circulating across campus and beyond, making her, and by extension, Jake, an unlikely internet sensation, turning Dr. Carter into a household name, even in circles that had never heard of Kant. One evening, while trying to make sense of Jake's incredibly disorganized room, Emily stumbled upon a hidden treasure. Tucked away beneath a pile of old t-shirts and amidst stacks of dog-eared philosophy books, she found a thick, spiral-bound notebook. It was Jake's thesis manuscript. Her initial reaction was disdain. She expected a jumbled, half-baked mess. But as she started to read, her eyebrows slowly rose. The writing was raw, unconventional, brimming with unconventional ideas and passionate arguments, a stark contrast to the dry academic papers she usually reviewed. It explored the intersection of ancient Stoicism and modern digital culture, positing radical solutions for contemporary anxieties. It was messy, yes, but undeniably brilliant, deep, creative, and profoundly insightful. It was the kind of work that could change conversations, but it had never been submitted. She felt a pang of something akin to admiration, and then a flicker of understanding. Slowly, painstakingly, a new realization began to dawn on both of them. Emily, witnessing Jake's unexpected charisma and his ability to connect with students, and reading his truly profound, if unpolished, work, began to understand that his slacker persona masked a genuinely brilliant, deeply philosophical mind. He wasn't just a rebel. He was a thinker, a humanist, a philosopher in his own right, perhaps even more so than many of her meticulously academic colleagues. And Jake, forced to embody Emily's rigorous schedule, her endless responsibilities, and the weight of her academic reputation, began to see beyond the Ice Queen facade. He saw the sheer discipline, the intellectual horsepower required to maintain her position, and the quiet passion that, though carefully concealed, underpinned her dedication to philosophy. He started to understand that her strictness was born not of coldness, but of a profound respect for the subject matter. The person they each thought they hated, the caricature they had built up in their minds, was slowly crumbling, revealing something far more complex and, perhaps, far more admirable. The chasm between their two opposing worlds was beginning to bridge. The initial shock of the body swap had given way to a precarious routine, but the complications were beginning to mount. Living each other's lives wasn't just a comedic struggle, it was a tightrope walk over an abyss of potential career-ending disasters for both of them. Jake, still in Emily's body, was particularly ill-suited for the meticulous administrative duties that came with being a top-tier professor. One morning, still half asleep after a late-night binge-watching existentialist documentaries, a very un-Emily activity, he completely forgot to check Emily's carefully organized email inbox. As a result, he missed a crucial, urgent meeting with the dean of the faculty, Dr. Henderson. Dr. Henderson, a stern woman with a reputation for sniffing out weakness, had already been observing Dr. Carter's recent erratic behavior, the spontaneous lectures, the odd pronouncements at faculty meetings, the sudden, inexplicable bursts of laughter from her office. The missed meeting was the final straw. She began to seriously suspect that Dr. Carter was suffering from a psychological breakdown or, worse, a severe case of academic burnout. Rumors, fueled by whispers from the faculty meeting, began to circulate, casting a dark cloud over Emily's previously unblemished reputation. Meanwhile, Emily, forced to navigate the treacherous social landscape of student life in Jake's body, found herself caught in a different kind of academic peril. Jake's group of friends, a motley crew of good-natured but mischievous slackers, decided to play a prank on her, thinking she was Jake. They convinced her to submit a philosophy essay, written entirely by her, Emily's, brilliant mind, for a particularly challenging seminar. The essay was, predictably, a masterpiece, deeply insightful, meticulously argued, and far beyond anything Jake Miller was ever known to produce. The professor, a cynical old academic who had been teaching for decades, immediately flagged it. He summoned Jake to his office, his eyes narrowed in suspicion. "Mr. Miller," he began, tapping the pristine essay, "this is remarkably good. In fact, it's too good. I'm afraid I have no choice but to suspect you of plagiarism." Emily, whose entire career was built on intellectual integrity, was aghast. The irony was suffocating. The mounting pressures, the constant near disasters, and the sheer impossibility of their situation finally forced them to confront each other. They arranged a clandestine meeting in the darkest, most deserted corner of the university library, late one stormy night. The old library, usually a quiet sanctuary, felt eerie and atmospheric in the gloom, illuminated only by the faint glow of emergency lights. "We need to fix this, Miller," Emily hissed, her voice, Jake's voice, a furious whisper, as she paced frantically between the towering bookshelves filled with ancient texts. "My career is unraveling, and you're about to be expelled for plagiarism." "My career?" Jake retorted, his voice, Emily's voice, surprisingly high-pitched with frustration. "You think your career is bad? I nearly got us fired from the dean's meeting. And I had to pretend to understand the difference between post-structuralism and postmodernism for 2 hours yesterday." Their argument quickly escalated into a ridiculous, whispered shouting match, filled with increasingly absurd accusations and frantic, hand-waving gestures. "You lecture like a stand-up comedian," Emily accused. "And you walk around looking like you just fought a bear in a dumpster," Jake countered. It was a chaotic, hilarious scene, two people trapped in bodies they didn't recognize, venting years of pent-up animosity through the wrong vocal cords. In their desperate search for a solution, they began scouring the library's ancient texts, convinced that if a magical statue had caused the swap, then ancient lore might hold the key to reversing it. They pulled down dusty tomes on Greek mythology, ancient curses, and forgotten alchemical rituals, spreading them out on a large, oak table. Perhaps it was a forgotten spell of Circe? Emily mused, her brow furrowed in concentration, completely missing the absurdity of the situation. "Or a mischievous minor deity?" Jake offered, half-joking. Just as they were poring over a particularly obscure text on sympathetic magic and transference of essence, a flashlight beam cut through the darkness. "Hey, what are you two doing here after hours?" It was the formidable night watchman, his face stern. Panic seized them. If they were caught, the explanation would be impossible. "Quick, think," Jake whispered, grabbing Emily's arm. Without thinking, he, in Emily's body, pulled Emily, in Jake's body, close, pressing her against the bookshelf, his lips hovering awkwardly close to her ear. We're just having a romantic moment," he blurted out, his voice a frantic, but surprisingly convincing whisper. Emily, utterly mortified, but understanding the dire situation, played along, stiffly leaning into Jake's embrace. The guard, a burly man who had seen it all, grunted, a flicker of amusement in his eyes. "Right. Romantic moment. Well, take your romantic moment outside, lovebirds. Libraries closed." They mumbled their apologies, blushing furiously, and hastily retreated, escaping into the rainy night, barely containing their laughter once out of earshot. The shared near-miss, the ridiculousness of their cover story, and the sheer desperation of their situation forged a strange new bond. It forced them to rely on each other, to actually cooperate. Jake, with his street smarts and years of student-level subterfuge, began to coach Emily on how to convincingly act like a poor student. "Okay, Professor, rule number 1. Never make eye contact with the bursar. Rule number 2. Always look slightly hungover, even if you're not. And for the love of Socrates, stop trying to use big words when you're ordering coffee. Just say latte, not a caffeinated elixir of milk and roasted beans." Emily, in turn, began to teach Jake the subtle art of academic power. "Jake, when you speak to Dr. Henderson, maintain eye contact, but don't challenge her directly. Use rhetorical questions. Imply you've considered her points, then subtly redirect. And for heaven's sake, stop slumping. Stand tall. Command the room, even if you're terrified." As they spent more time together, sharing secrets, coaching each other, and navigating the bizarre complexities of their swapped lives. A strange, undeniable chemistry began to bubble beneath the surface of their initial animosity. The contempt slowly faded, replaced by grudging respect, then a surprising camaraderie. There were moments of shared laughter, moments of unexpected vulnerability. One evening, as they were reviewing some of Jake's old thesis notes, Jake, in Emily's body, looked up at Emily, in Jake's body, a strange, unreadable expression on Emily's beautiful face. "You know," he said, his voice, Emily's voice, surprisingly soft. "I hate to say it, but you, in my body, actually look pretty damn attractive. All that intense focus, it's kind of hot." Emily, in Jake's body, felt a blush creep up her neck, a foreign sensation. She stammered, cleared her throat, and finally managed to retort, "And you, in my body, are surprisingly less irritating than usual." A beat of awkward silence, then a shared, genuine smile. The boundaries between them, once so rigidly defined, were blurring in unexpected, unsettling, and undeniably intriguing ways. The forced proximity and shared predicament had stripped away the superficial layers of their animosity, revealing the complex, often vulnerable, individuals beneath. Their clandestine meetings in the quiet corners of the library or deserted classrooms, initially tense and driven by panic, gradually transformed into something deeper. They found themselves talking not just about reversing the swap, but about their lives, their dreams, and their disappointments. One evening, huddled together in a dusty corner of the stacks, the faint scent of old paper and leather hanging in the air, Emily, in Jake's body, looked at Jake, in Emily's body, her gaze unusually soft. "Jake," she began, his voice, surprisingly gentle, "I've read your thesis. It's remarkable. Truly insightful. Why haven't you graduated? Why haven't you submitted it?" Jake, in Emily's body, shifted uncomfortably. He ran a manicured hand, Emily's hand, through his, Emily's, hair, a gesture that looked utterly alien on her. He stared down at the polished wooden table, a rare flicker of vulnerability in Emily's usually guarded eyes. "It's complicated, Professor," he confessed, his voice, her voice, a quiet murmur. I tried to submit it a few years ago. But the feedback I got was all about conformity to established academic paradigms, lack of proper citation protocol, insufficient deference to existing scholarship. They wanted me to dilute it, to make it palatable for the system. He finally met her gaze, a spark of his old defiance returning. "I believe that true philosophy, true thought, shouldn't be constrained by rubrics and deadlines. The system, this whole academic machine," he gestured vaguely around the library, "it's designed to flatten ideas, to judge the profundity of a thought by a grade-point average. It's not about truth anymore. It's about tenure and publications and prestige." I couldn't do it. I refused to let them put a grade on my passion, to let them tell me my ideas weren't valid because they didn't fit their little boxes. So I walked away. I refused to defend it. Emily listened, genuinely moved. Her own world, for so long, had been defined by those very metrics: grades, publications, tenure. She had thrived within that system, meticulously building her career brick by intellectual brick. But hearing Jake articulate his disillusionment, his raw passion for philosophy unburdened by academic expectation, struck a chord deep within her. She recognized the echo of a younger Emily, a student who had first fallen in love with philosophy's revolutionary power before the system had slowly, subtly, molded her into its image. For the first time, she truly understood that her own relentless pursuit of academic perfection had, perhaps, come at the cost of the very passion that had initially drawn her to the field. She had become what Jake had accused her of being, a guardian of the ivory tower rather than a seeker of truth. A profound realization washed over her. She, too, had become entangled in the very system he disdained. In that moment, a new project was born. They decided, together, to rework Jake's thesis. But this time, it wouldn't just be Jake's raw brilliance, nor Emily's academic precision. It would be a fusion of both. Emily, with her rigorous logical framework and impeccable research skills, helped Jake structure his arguments, refine his language, and ground his radical ideas in a solid academic foundation. Jake, in turn, infused Emily's meticulous edits with his characteristic spark, ensuring the thesis retained its emotional resonance, its free-spirited creativity, and its defiant challenge to conventional thought. It was a true collaboration, their minds, though not their bodies, working in perfect sync. One late night, fueled by lukewarm coffee and the shared exhilaration of intellectual creation, they found themselves caught in a moment of pure, unadulterated joy. Jake, in Emily's body, had found an old, crackly jazz record on Emily's ancient laptop. He hit play, and the soft strains of a melancholic saxophone filled the otherwise silent library annex. "Come on, Professor," he murmured, his voice, her voice, a playful invitation, a little study break. He stood up, offering his, Emily's, hand to Emily, in Jake's body. Hesitantly, Emily took it. They began to sway awkwardly, then slowly, hesitantly, they danced amidst the towering bookshelves, their movements clumsy in their unfamiliar bodies, but their eyes locked, a shared smile growing on their faces. It wasn't romantic in a conventional sense, but it was intimate, a silent acknowledgement of their growing connection. As the music played, Jake in Emily's body leaned in, his voice, Emily's voice, a soft whisper. "You know, Professor," he said, "if every professor were like you, the you who's helping me now, the you who actually cares about the ideas, not just the grades, I probably would have graduated in my 4th year." Emily, in Jake's body, squeezed his hand, a warmth spreading through her, his chest. She looked up at him, her gaze earnest. "And if every student were like you, Jake, the you who challenges, who questions, who has such an incredible, passionate mind, I wouldn't be teaching. I'd just be sitting, listening, learning." The air between them crackled with unspoken understanding. The swap, initially a curse, had become a profound catalyst, forcing them to see themselves and each other through an entirely new lens. They were no longer adversaries, but confidants, co-conspirators in a bizarre, life-altering experiment. The bond between them, forged in the fires of shared humiliation and intellectual collaboration, was growing deeper, more complex, and undeniably, irrevocably real. The truth of their unexpected connection was slowly, beautifully, being revealed. Just as their unexpected collaboration began to yield profound personal and academic insights, a new and far more public crisis loomed. Columbia University announced its annual National Academic Symposium, a prestigious event that drew scholars from across the country, showcasing the cutting edge of philosophical thought. The timing for Emily and Jake couldn't have been worse. Due to Emily's recent, bizarrely popular lectures and the buzz around Professor Carter's newfound charisma, Jake, in Emily's body, was pressured by the dean to deliver the opening address for the entire symposium. It was a career-defining moment for Emily, an honor usually reserved for the most senior and revered faculty. Jake was terrified. The thought of standing before hundreds of esteemed academics, expected to deliver a profound and articulate speech as Emily Carter, sent shivers down his spine. His usual rebellious bravado melted away in the face of such immense, public scrutiny. Simultaneously, Emily, in Jake's body, was facing her own academic crucible. Jake's, plagiarism accusation had escalated, and the only way to avoid immediate expulsion was for Jake Miller to present her original thesis at a special student panel during the symposium. It was a desperate gamble, designed by the department to either expose the plagiarism or, in the unlikely event it was genuine, give the Perpetual senior a final chance. Emily, despite having written the core of the thesis, still had to embody Jake's persona, defend her arguments in his rough-and-tumble style, and convince a panel of skeptical professors that this sudden leap in academic prowess was genuine. The pressure was immense. The nights leading up to the symposium became a blur of frantic, often hilarious, preparation. They holed up in Jake's tiny, messy apartment, transforming it into a chaotic war room. Emily, in Jake's body, coached Jake, in Emily's body, on the nuances of academic rhetoric, the precise inflection of Emily's public speaking voice, and the subtle art of deflecting challenging questions from old-school academics. Remember, Jake, she'd instruct, her voice, his, firm, maintain eye contact. Project confidence. And for heaven's sake, don't crack a joke about Nietzsche and a pigeon, no matter how tempting. Jake, in turn, drilled Emily on embodying his own laid-back, yet passionate, student persona. Okay, professor, when you're talking about the deconstruction of societal norms, you need to lean forward a bit. Maybe run your hand through your hair like this, he demonstrated, using Emily's delicate hand to mimic his rough gesture. And don't be afraid to sound a little unpolished. It's part of the charm. Their practice sessions were a comedy of errors. Jake would try to deliver Emily's opening address, stumbling over complex philosophical terms, his, Emily's, refined voice cracking with panic, occasionally bursting into fits of uncontrolled laughter. Emily, attempting to channel Jake's confident nonchalance, would practice her thesis defense, sounding far too formal, his, face contorted in frustrated grimaces as she tried to adopt a more casual, student-like demeanor. No, no, professor, Jake would exclaim, collapsing onto the futon in a fit of giggles. You sound like you're reading from a historical document, not defending your life's work. Unbeknownst to them, their late-night antics were not entirely private. One of Jake's friends, passing by the apartment and hearing the strange sounds of Professor Carter, Jake, practicing impassioned, yet bizarre, speeches, recorded a short video. The clip, showing Dr. Carter wildly gesturing and accidentally tripping over a stack of books while dramatically declaring, to be or not to be, a tenured professor, quickly went viral. The caption, Professor Carter's secret practice sessions, more entertaining than Harvard. The university, much to its surprise, found itself garnering more unexpected publicity than it had in decades, all thanks to its suddenly eccentric philosophy star. The night before the symposium, an eerie calm settled over them. Exhausted but strangely exhilarated, they walked to the campus courtyard, finding respite beneath the ancient oak trees. They sat together, gazing up at the bronze statue of Socrates, its weathered form a silent witness to their ordeal. The moon cast long, dancing shadows, and a gentle breeze rustled the leaves. You know, Jake, in Emily's body, murmured, his voice, hers, pensive, when this whole thing started, I thought it was the worst possible thing that could happen. Trapped in the body of my academic nemesis. Emily, in Jake's body, nodded slowly. And I thought I'd lost everything. My reputation, my career, my sanity. Forced into the life of a perpetually rebellious student. They fell silent for a moment, the weight of their words hanging in the air. Then Emily spoke, her voice, his, soft but clear. But maybe, she began, turning to look at him, her eyes, his, reflecting the moonlight, maybe this switch, this entire insane ordeal, was the best thing that ever happened to either of us. Jake met her gaze, a profound understanding passing between them. A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched Emily's, his, lips. Yeah, he agreed, his voice, hers, filled with an unexpected warmth. Maybe it was. In the quiet embrace of the night, beneath the stoic gaze of Socrates, they acknowledged the unthinkable. Their worst nightmare had, in its own bizarre way, become their greatest blessing. The stage was set, and two vastly different individuals, in each other's skin, were ready to face their destiny. The air in the grand university auditorium buzzed with an electric anticipation. Hundreds of scholars, students, and distinguished guests filled the seats, awaiting the opening address of the National Academic Symposium. On stage, bathed in the glow of the spotlights, stood Jake Miller, but in the impeccably tailored suit and poised demeanor of Dr. Emily Carter. His heart hammered against Emily's ribs, a frantic rhythm against the calm he projected. He took a deep breath, Emily's voice resonating in his chest, and approached the podium. He began with Emily's meticulously prepared introduction, a dense, scholarly overview of contemporary philosophical challenges. But then, something shifted. The Perpetual senior, the rebel philosopher, began to weave his own perspective into her academic framework. He spoke of the disconnect between abstract theory and lived experience, of the urgent need for philosophy to engage with the messy realities of the human condition. He used analogies from popular culture not to dumb down the concepts, but to make them profoundly relatable. He spoke with Emily's articulate precision, but with Jake's raw, genuine passion. His delivery was a masterful blend of intellectual rigor and heartfelt conviction. He looked out at the sea of faces, not as a professor lecturing, but as a human being sharing profound truths. "We speak of truth," he declared, his voice, Emily's voice, swelling with emotion. "But what is truth if it cannot be felt, if it cannot inspire us to live more authentically, more compassionately? Philosophy is not merely an exercise of the mind, it is a symphony of the soul." The room fell into an almost reverent silence. Professors, initially skeptical of Dr. Carter's new style, found themselves captivated, some even moved to tears. Jake, in Emily's body, had delivered a speech that transcended mere academics, touching the very core of human understanding. He concluded, a confident, yet humble, smile gracing Emily's lips, and the auditorium erupted in a standing ovation, thunderous applause echoing through the hall. Meanwhile, in a smaller, but equally tense, lecture hall, Emily, in Jake's body, prepared for her own ordeal. The student thesis panel was a formidable array of stern-faced professors, ready to dissect Jake Miller's work. Emily, dressed in Jake's slightly rumpled but now clean blazer, stood before them, a nervous energy thrumming through Jake's limbs. She began her defense, not with the academic jargon she usually employed, but with a surprising blend of Jake's casual conversational style and her own razor-sharp intellect. She articulated the thesis's core arguments, the intersection of Stoicism and modern digital life, with a clarity and passion that belied Jake's reputation. She defended the unconventional structure, arguing that true innovation often requires breaking from traditional molds. Her arguments were incisive, her logic unassailable, but infused with a humanistic empathy that transformed what could have been a dry academic exercise into a compelling philosophical statement. As she spoke, she realized she wasn't just defending Jake's work, she was defending a part of herself that she had long suppressed, the part that believed in the emotional, human aspect of philosophy. She spoke not of abstract concepts, but of the anxieties of modern youth, the search for meaning in a chaotic world, the very human desire for connection that Jake's thesis addressed. She captivated the panel, turning their skepticism into genuine intrigue. Just as she was concluding, making a powerful final point about the necessity of integrating philosophy into daily life, the doors to the lecture hall swung open. A few distinguished guests from the main auditorium, having heard whispers of Jake Miller's unexpectedly brilliant thesis defense, slipped in to listen. Among them was the dean, Dr. Henderson, her expression a mix of surprise and dawning admiration. As both Jake and Emily finished their respective presentations, a singular event unfolded. In the main auditorium, as Jake, in Emily's body, basked in the warmth of the ovation, the symposium organizers wheeled out a special exhibit, a meticulously restored, gleaming bronze replica of the Socrates statue from the campus courtyard, to be displayed for the duration of the event. Jake, still riding the high of his speech, instinctively reached out, his hand brushing the cool, smooth bronze. At the exact same moment, in the smaller lecture hall, Emily, in Jake's body, having just concluded her brilliant thesis defense to polite applause, was approached by a curious student who pointed to a small, intricate engraving on the replica statue of Socrates that was also present in their room for a display. "Professor," the student asked, "what does this ancient Greek inscription mean?" Emily, in Jake's body, leaned in to read, and her hand, without conscious thought, brushed against the statue's surface. At that precise instant, a blinding flash of lightning tore through the stormy night sky outside, illuminating the university grounds. A deafening crack of thunder echoed, shaking the very foundations of the buildings. A searing, familiar surge of energy coursed through both statues, through both their bodies, a powerful current that mirrored the force of their initial swap. Both Jake and Emily cried out, their eyes widening in sudden understanding. The world spun, colors bled, and a resonant boom reverberated through their minds. They crumpled to the floor, unconscious, amidst the murmurs of concerned attendees. A moment of blackness. Then slowly they stirred. Jake, opening his eyes, saw the familiar, pristine ceiling of Emily's apartment, but felt the comforting weight of his own broad chest. Emily, regaining consciousness, felt the rough fabric of Jake's futon, but saw the elegant, manicured fingers of her own hand. They were back, in their own bodies. The aftermath was a whirlwind. The evaluation committees, having witnessed both their extraordinary performances, were unanimous. Jake Miller, despite his notorious academic history, was given unprecedented approval for his thesis and, in a rare move, granted a special graduation summa cum laude, with highest honors. His unique blend of academic rigor and passionate humanism had deeply impressed the faculty. Emily Carter, for her part, was not only cleared of any psychological distress, but was also awarded the prestigious Inspirational Educator of the Year award. Her recent lectures and the profound impact of her opening address a testament to her transformative teaching. The swap had not just changed them, it had redefined their academic standing in ways neither could have ever imagined. The return to their own bodies felt both familiar and utterly alien. They were home, but home had fundamentally changed. The university, too, had been subtly transformed by the ripple effects of their extraordinary ordeal. Dr. Emily Carter, the Ice Queen, was gone. In her place stood Professor Carter 2.0, as her students affectionately called her. Her lectures, while still intellectually rigorous, were now infused with a warmth, an accessibility, and a genuine enthusiasm that had been utterly absent before. She encouraged lively debate, welcomed unconventional perspectives, and often concluded her classes with thought-provoking questions rather than definitive answers. Her tailored blazers were occasionally replaced by softer cardigans, and a genuine smile, rather than a polite, distant one, now frequently graced her lips. Students flocked to her office hours, no longer intimidated but inspired, eager to engage with a professor who truly seemed to understand their struggles and passions. The solitude that had once defined her life slowly began to recede, replaced by the vibrant hum of connection. Jake Miller, the Perpetual senior, had finally graduated, and with highest honors no less. The university, keen to capitalize on his newfound academic fame and charisma, offered him a temporary position as a teaching assistant for Dr. Carter's introductory philosophy course. He still retained his infectious wit, his playful irreverence, and his habit of questioning everything, but now it was tempered by a newfound maturity and a deeper appreciation for the structured pursuit of knowledge. He cut his shaggy hair, bought a few, slightly rumpled, button-down shirts, and approached his new role with a surprising sense of responsibility. The sight of them together in the classroom became a beloved campus spectacle. Emily, poised and articulate, would lay out a complex philosophical concept, her explanations clear and incisive. Then, Jake would step forward, his eyes twinkling, and translate it into relatable, often hilarious, anecdotes, bringing the ancient wisdom to life with modern examples and a healthy dose of humor. The class would erupt in laughter, then settle into thoughtful discussion, a perfect synergy of their two distinct teaching styles. Emily would often catch herself smiling as Jake made a particularly poignant, yet funny, point, and Jake would subtly defer to Emily's deeper understanding, their respect for each other palpable. One afternoon, after a particularly lively lecture that ended with Jake, as TA, performing a dramatic, interpretive dance to explain Plato's cave, a bright-eyed freshman lingered behind. "Excuse me, Professor Carter, Mr. Miller," she began, a hint of curiosity in her voice. "I hope this isn't too personal, but you two have such incredible chemistry. Did you ever, date each other?" Emily and Jake exchanged a look, a shared history of impossible events flashing between them. A knowing smile touched Emily's lips, and Jake let out a soft chuckle. No, Emily replied, her voice soft but firm. We never dated. Jake, ever the showman, leaned in conspiratorially, his eyes glinting. No, he echoed, but we once understood each other, far more deeply than that. He winked, leaving the student utterly perplexed, but undeniably intrigued. They walked out of the classroom together, the sounds of student chatter fading behind them. As they crossed the campus, they paused, looking out over the familiar green expanse of the courtyard. There, beneath the ancient oaks, stood the magnificent bronze statue of Socrates, now gleaming softly in the afternoon sun, its weathered face seeming to bear a faint, knowing smile. It was the silent witness to their impossible transformation, a timeless reminder of the power of unexpected connections. Emily turned to Jake, a playful glint in her eyes. You know, she said, a mischievous note in her voice, if there's ever another lightning storm, Jake Miller, I swear to all the ancient gods, you are not to touch anything within 10 feet of me. Jake grinned, a genuine, unburdened smile that made him look years younger. He took a step closer, his eyes challenging hers. Can't make any promises, Professor, he replied, his voice laced with the comfortable irreverence that had once infuriated her, but now simply charmed her. After all, who knows what wisdom another little spark might bring. They shared a laugh, the sound echoing lightly in the warm afternoon air. Their lives, once rigidly defined and utterly separate, had intertwined in the most extraordinary way, leaving them both profoundly changed, richer, and undeniably, irrevocably connected. The professor and the perpetual senior had found not just their own truths, but a shared path forward, forever bound by the electrifying magic that had forced them to walk in each other's shoes.